So, good afternoon. How are you, Paula?
I'm great. Thank you. It's morning on the West Coast.
That's very good. It's morning. It's always morning on the West Coast, I think. Anyway, thank you so much for joining. We wanted to talk to you about the Cascadia Innovation Corridor project and a number of other things. Could you tell us a little bit about that project and your involvement?
Well, the Cascadia Innovation Corridor is an effort around the mega region of Vancouver, BC to Portland, Oregon, about 370 miles. And the notion of the economic region and the growth and importance of the economic value to our greater region. Governor Chris Gregoire, former governor, is the co-chair from Challenge Seattle, which is a group of businesses that she leads in the Seattle area. And Greg Davignon from British Columbia Business Council is the other co-chair. So together, our efforts are not just around important things like transportation and the future of the high-speed rail corridor, but affordable housing along this stretch of important area, broadband, connectivity, education. What can we share and learn from each other in this region around education, medical enhancements, building, agriculture? It's all aspects really of an economic region that's trying to leverage the value that each of us bring and take advantage of that so that we build a sustainable future. And that's what it's about for us, is to maintain our equity values, our environmental values, our ability for people to live, work, and play in areas that they want to, because the Pacific Northwest is a great asset and we want it to thrive in the future.
That's phenomenal. It sounds like a really visionary project. And so thanks for sharing that. What are the critical pieces of it, or the projects, the strategic projects, and maybe give us a sense of the timeline as well?
Well, I co-chair for Cascadia Innovation Corridor. I co-chair a committee where our focus is on housing, transportation, and connectivity, broadband from that sense. So our small committee aspect is around the concept of a transportation corridor that works. We know that expanding Interstate 5, which is what the lifeline that threads us together, is too expensive, not sustainable, environmentally infeasible, and not the way of the future. So we have been supporting the government, both British Columbia, Washington State, and Oregon's efforts to envision a corridor that becomes more of an ultra-high-speed transportation corridor. Whether it's high-speed rail or something that's even more modern, we'll see. They've not attached themselves to that, but we're trying to, from Cascadia Innovation Corridor, be the business arm that supports, rallies, and really cheerleads with those government agencies in a public-private support network so far to get this concept advanced. And that means every community along the corridor really needs to buy into the notion of what role they'll play and what the advantages of a high-speed transportation network might be. There's going to, in this mega region, between now and 2050, which used to sound like a long way away, there's something like 3.5 to 5 million more people envisioned as a population growth. Our three major cities, Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver, BC, can't hold them all, nor do people want perhaps to live in those three major cities. So how do we thread it together? How do we have housing that works for people, that's affordable, and allow business and commerce to continue to work in that corridor in a way that is an asset to our economic future?
That's really interesting. I was talking to somebody yesterday who highlighted the fact that housing is a big problem almost everywhere across the U.S. And it's, worse now, of course, because of wood inflation. And his point was that it's increasing the cost of a house by as much as 20%.
Yeah.
So affordable housing is a real problem in your neck of the woods as well.
Yeah.
That's really important. Previously, you were the Secretary of Transportation for the state of Washington, and a highly respected Secretary of Transportation as well, I might add. We've heard great things about you from a lot of different people. Now you're the Senior Vice President of WSP. Can you talk a little bit about this chasm that exists between the public and private sectors? I was writing about that earlier today. This trust issue is a giant issue. Can you talk about that?
Well, I spent 34 years on the public side. I started at Washington State DOT as an Engineer 1, fresh out of college, and held, I think, every position in the agency before I became the secretary in 2007. And I was the secretary for Governor Chris Gregoire from 2007 to 2013. And at that time, I was not quite old enough to retire, but I did retire from public service and moved over to WSP USA, and had never envisioned being a consultant. Loved the public sector and the service aspect and the ability to leave a legacy of infrastructure and services for all the people of the state of Washington.
Right.
But what I've come to find now on the private side is we both need each other, right? I mean, for us as an enterprise of transportation delivery folks, we need the contractors, the designers, the planners, and the public agencies who are our clients and who really are the decision makers. But we have to work together to support not just good project investments and efficient, sustainable kinds of resilient projects, but we need to support each other in what our economic goals are, and help, well, I don't want to say lobby, but to advocate for good transportation. In our state, for example, we've had a lack of funding for things just like preservation from our legislature. And this has gone on for a lot of years. It's not a reflection of the current body that's there, but a lack of value towards preserving the assets that we have. And always it's more fun to cut a ribbon, right, on an expansion or a new project. So I think it's important for the public and private sector to support these goals, or the private sector, excuse me, to support the goals of the government agencies and to help them think about ways that we can move to the next level for a transportation future, and how we can take advantage of the technology revolution to make our systems as efficient as we can and sustainable for the future. So we need each other. And I don't see this huge lack of trust here in Washington State. I do think it exists. And I think all of us need to learn how to talk about the transportation enterprise better and find that mutual support through our relationships.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You know, I wrote a book, and I recently published it on, it's called Vision, Our Strategic Infrastructure Roadmap Forward. And, one of the things that jumped out was the digitization, electrification of our infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And the fact that, and just to ask you a question, the fact that there's a changing role for the public sector, because the public sector becomes much more, I think, of a facilitator of an innovation enabler. And that's hard because of procurement rules. And all of a sudden, that if you're going to upgrade an asset with new software every year, how do you do that? And it'd be interesting to get your reaction to the evolution of the public sector in terms of facilitating projects.
Well, there's a lot of interest by the state DOTs. I know this because I'm very active in the AASHTO association that they belong to. A lot of interest in the state DOTs to use the new tools that are available and to adapt their methods to a way that can become more efficient delivery, but more, really more effective using the technology that's there, not just to design and build projects, but to operate the transportation systems. Technology is going to just blow that up, I think, in the future and really enable it. But another basic fact is that legislative bodies or funding bodies don't want to spend money on technology. It's
Right.
just not, there's got to be a way for all of us to explain better and talk in plain English, I think, about the ways that these kinds of innovations, technology, most critically, can help our transportation systems work better. And, you know, we always talk about the system, the infrastructure, the road, the rail, the transit. What we really need to shift all of our focus around is the people that are using the transportation system. And if you put the people first and you think about their needs, their inability to get from home to the daycare, to the office and back again, and for their recreation, always putting their trip at the forefront, I think we can all figure out better ways to use technology, to work better across agencies, and do this in a more integrated way.
That's a really interesting point. That's the Steve Jobs point, you know, when he came back to Apple. It's a famous video, and he's saying, you know, you've got to figure out how to think about things from the customer's point of view.
Yeah.
And that's what technology allows you to do if you do that. So that's really interesting. And you, of course, are sitting in the heart of technology for us. So fantastic. You know, one of the other issues is that you're outspoken about the role of women as leaders in transportation. How important is it to have a female leadership in terms of infrastructure project decision making?
Well, there's a couple of reasons that both it's necessary and important to have women and diverse employees, not just working within an area, but to also be the face of the programs that you're enhancing. When you think about the decisions that come when you have diverse opinions sitting around the table, you realize that when we all look alike and we all think alike, we're going to come up with the same answers. And I've lived in this world for 40 years now, and it's always fun to me to see someone who really doesn't come from perhaps even the background I did come in and say, why aren't we doing this? Or why aren't we thinking differently? So I'm the chair of an association, national association called WTS International. We have 8,500 members and 65 chapters around the country. And our mission is to advance women, recruit, first of all, and help retain them in our industry, but then find ways that they can advance through their career goals to become leaders in transportation. We have a very diverse population around the country, and if we don't have people out talking to the people that we're serving that look like them and understand some of their community issues, we're never going to win as government or private sector transportation providers. We aren't going to understand the issues that they feel or see, or some of the damage that our transportation system has done from 40 years ago when we built the interstate system. So it's really exciting. And as this pandemic comes to a close, I'm knocking on wood, we can look at things differently, and the issue of equity and fairness and serving all of our communities has taken a whole new level of importance in transportation. So women are an essential part of it, as are all diverse, non-traditional employees in this environment. So I'm just rallying the troops, trying to make sure that as we need more workforce in our transportation industry, that we give women a chance and we help them move into leadership roles. Women bring something different, perhaps, than what traditional leaders have brought.
No, it's really interesting, and in my mind, it also combines with this point you made a second ago on the people first, or what I was talking about in terms of customers. And 50% of the customers are women, and it strikes me that giving people a big voice in making fundamental decisions is absolutely important, because that's the real change that I see happening in infrastructure now.
Well, and I think nowadays, in all aspects of transportation decision making, there's much more teamwork involved than the old hierarchy of decision making where the director of the agency makes all the decisions. There's so much more team engagement and collaborative efforts, not just within an agency, but within a community or partnerships between cities, counties, state, and the federal government. The more voices you have to learn what perhaps you don't know before you make these decisions, I think the better. And I think that we have a really great opportunity where we are right now to make the kinds of changes we need to transform the system.
Well, great. Listen, thanks so much. Thanks for your service and for your dedication as well. Really appreciated talking to you.
It's been fun, Norm. See you soon.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.